To know your enemy, you must become your enemy. Sun Tzu. Well, therefore, welcome guys to another episode of Sky Wars. Wait, did you hear that? Yeah, that was the sound of my ankles breaking.
I believe I can.
Unpopular opinion, but I don't think this video will blow up. It has been challenged with an immediate disadvantage of being uploaded by a smaller YouTuber, and it will be difficult for it to be popular regardless of how good it is. So therefore, if you enjoy this video, consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always unsubscribe later. Enjoy the video. Where there is demand, there is supply, and I am the supply. Therefore, I'm going to be using a fleece back jersey in the color dusty pink and magenta/maroon. Oh boy, here I go crafting again. So we're going to be combining the pink wool with the magenta wool, and your design should look something like this, or at least mine did. Now, back to the real world.
So looking deeper into YouTube merch, I found that either they use more of a graphic print, or they end up doing a lot of fonts that are weird colored all over the hoodie. But for me, I am definitely not a graphic designer, so therefore I will be doing more fabric manipulation type of stuff.
Starting on the pattern, you're going to be taking your basic measurements of your neck, and then you're going to want your shoulder measurements, and then here's the armhole, and then you're going to want your bust measurement, and you're going to want your neck to your bust, and then your bust to your waist, and then you're going to put another measurement, and then waist to hips. And then you're going to connect all of this, and you can leave out the dart because you don't need it for this jacket. Now you're going to extend down 3 inches, or however big you want your ribbing to be. So mine was 3 inches, that's why I extended it down. And then you're going to do the same with the back, except the neckline is going to be shallower, so it's just going to be up a little bit more. So then for the sleeve, you're going to want to measure out how long you want it from essentially your bicep to your wrist, and then you want to measure your sleeve cap height. You're going to be taking this measurement from each armhole, and then you're going to be adding them together. So like the front and the back armhole, you're going to add them together, and then divide it by 2, and then that is how you get this measurement. Like that, you're going to divide this into 4, and then you're going to go like essentially like that, and then it's going to come down into your wrist. Okay, it's going to be a lot smaller down here, more like that, but you get the gist. So after this, we're going to be making the hood, and you're going to want to take your neckline measurement, and then you're going to trace it out. So it's going to look like this, and then let's just pretend this is your front neck hole measurement, and then this is your back neck hole measurement. You're going to extend this 1/4 of an inch, so it can overlap in the front. As you can see, I don't have the overlapping in this illustration, because originally I wasn't going to have an overlap, but I decided otherwise later on. So now you're going to extend it up, and I brought it out so it curves like this, and then you're going to want to bring it around like that, and you want to measure your head to make sure that this fits completely around it, and if you want it to be loose, then you can just make it taller. So then you're going to want the cuff, and you want the cuff to be smaller than the wrist measurement. I mean, not your wrist measurement, but the sleeve wrist measurement. So it bunches a little bit. And then I believe that should be it. This fabric was actually pretty easy to cut out. It just took a long time because I have a lot of pieces, so you should be fine just cutting it out normally. So now that I have you here, it's time for another story. So in high school, I took all 4 years of Latin. And if you were in Latin, you most likely joined Latin Club. Now, this club allowed you to go on these school field trips, and it was called Latin State Convention. And you would basically go on a 3-day trip with your Latin class to a certain location, like a different school, and then you would just do Latin-based activities like Latin rap battles, or Quidditch, or dodgeball. If you've never been to one of these, you don't know that Latin kids are insanely good at dodgeball, and it's a little scary actually. But anyway, so while I was there, I really wanted to climb trees. Now where I'm from, there really aren't any trees that you can climb, so when we went to this other campus, they had all these trees that you could climb. So I went around asking people if they wanted to climb trees with me, and the only person that said yes was my friend. Let's just call her Alice. So my friend Alice said yes to climbing trees with me. So I started to climb a tree, but it ended up just like being twigs at the top of the tree, so we couldn't climb that high. And then she picked out another tree, and we walked over to it. And while we were walking over to it, all these girls told us, "Oh, don't fall off the tree." And we just laughed, and we're like, haha, no, we won't. So my friend Alice started climbing the tree, and as she got to the top, her foot got stuck in the branches, and she was too high up to do anything, so I couldn't help her. And the branch started cracking, and her foot was still stuck. The entire branch just snapped, and she fell. Thankfully, there was grass on the bottom, but she ended up splitting open her foot, and because she was barefoot at the time, I don't know why she was barefoot, but she was, and we ended up having to walk to the nurse's station and get her foot bandaged. So that was an experience. Yeah, I mean, a lot of weird stuff happened on that Latin trip, but that was just one of them. Okay, let's get back to sewing. Okay, so now I'm just interfacing all the pieces that are going to go into the hood cage and also the sleeve cage. I'm just block fusing this because it's easier than cutting out all the pieces and interfacing and then ironing them to the actual pieces of fabric, it's easier just to iron the whole interfacing piece to the fabric pieces and then cut them out again. I'm using a woven interface because I don't want the fabric to be able to stretch. Therefore, I can sew it on my actual machine instead of having to use like a serger or something for the cage, especially because the cage is very structured and knits do not want to be structured at all. So it just helps. These are all of the pieces cut out, and this took a whopping 10 hours to do. Therefore, before we get on to sewing, this is a public service announcement urging people to eat. Eating is important. Do it.
Smoke
An appropriate substance.
every day.
Welcome to Cooking with Nian Nian. Today we will be making tomato toast. Let's get started. First you must preheat your stove and add oil to the pan. Next chop the tomatoes. Now it's time to add the tomatoes to the pan and add seasoning. Almost done, now bake the bread. It's burning. Flip the tomatoes. Now, spread the mayonnaise on the toast. Finally, put the cooked tomatoes on the toast.
Wow! Even better than Mama! Keep it up!
So we're first going to start off by sewing the little band on the top of the hood. After you flip it inside out, you're going to want to sew 1/8 of an inch across both edges. Now you're going to want to sew your two front head pieces on the hood together, and then I top stitched it, but you don't have to, it's not necessary. And then you're going to be pinning your two head width pieces into this top layer, if that makes sense. Now you're going to be taking this piece and we're going to be sewing this tube and then attaching it in this gap. After you turn your tube inside out, you're going to see the little holes that you left, and this is going to show where you're going to pin here to here, and then it's going to show where you connect it to the cage. This is what it should look like when you slide the tube in place, and you can clearly see where you want the tube to be placed because there's this weird like bulge thing that happens here, but it's going to be covered up by this part of the tube. Now we're going to be taking this strip that you just top stitched and we're going to be sliding it through this hole, and then we're going to be top stitching. And you should notice that the hood is coming together. And if you don't, then you done goofed somewhere and you gotta do it over. So this is how it should look. This is the back of the hood, and now I'm going to start on the armbands. Just like with the hood, you're going to be doing these weird dash sewing lines, but in the end, it'll work out. Don't worry. Just like the hood, we're going to be turning these pieces inside out. And during this clip, actually, my power went out for a couple of minutes, so I was sitting in the complete and utter darkness. And then after it came back on, I started sewing again, and I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. So I looked down, and it was a roach scurrying right by my foot. So I think the universe was just trying to tell me to go to sleep. It was 6 a.m. after all. The next day, I abruptly woke up at an early 2 p.m. because it was Thanksgiving. I went to my aunt's house and my mom made dinner. Don't worry though, we all wore masks and social distance the entire time.
Okay. This is delicious. This is divine.
So after I got back home, I started on my embroidery, and I realized that the sound of the embroidery is actually really soothing and like ASMR-y. So I'll let you guys listen for a little bit. When sewing the crown, you're going to want to do the basic stitching on the outside first, leaving the top of the crown open to put the cage pieces in. And then after this, you're going to flip it all inside out. And then when you're attaching it to the actual hood, you are going to want to top stitch everything down. You also need to serge your shoulder and side seams. After you finish top stitching these pieces, we're going to be sliding them into these slits, if you can see all of them. Notches are key when it comes to making this cage-like design because it allows you to easily slip your fabric in place without having to go back and check your pattern. After you have your entire cage sleeve assembled, you're going to want to top stitch it. And then after this, you sew it directly onto the sleeve, and then you're going to sew it onto the armhole. Now, I had trouble because the fabric was so thick, so I just mainly hand cranked it. When it comes to sewing the cuff and waistband on, you're going to want to use your sewing machine first and then serge it later because you're going to need to stretch it a lot and you have to use pins to do this. And then it happened. My sewing machine ended up breaking and would only sew in reverse, so I have to get it fixed. Fortunately, I was able to remove this part of my embroidery machine, so now it acts as a functioning sewing machine, so I can keep sewing this hoodie. So getting onto the basic hoodie, you're going to want to sew your face hoodie to your lining hoodie, and then after that we will be putting the grommet in. You're going to want to use an awl to poke a hole, and then you cut like an X in the fabric, and then you just use your press to press the grommet in. Also, remember to top stitch everything because it just gives it like a more quality feel. So even, let's just say if like I don't say to top stitch anything, I normally do a lot of the top stitching on the side because it's not necessary and it would just take up a lot of time in the video. So the last sewing step is you want to sew the two hoodies to the actual bodice of the jacket. Also, don't forget to put the string in the hood part so you can pull it tight. And now, time for the reveal.